All right, we are live with Jonas Tichenor.
Woohoo!
How are you? Nice to see you. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Oh, have I been getting hate mail? A lot of anxiety over this. No, just kidding.
Yeah, I'd like to apologize in advance for
Sure.
what may or may not be said.
Oh, it's going to be a doozy. That's
Yeah,
right. I'm
for
ready.
sure,
I'm
for
ready.
sure.
So, for the few folks who don't know you, your background even surprised me the other day. We were going through it. I'm like, you did that too,
hmm
So, you were a pivotal, aspect of taking DocuSign IPO. You've worked at the Channel Network. You've got, you're a two-time Emmy Award winning journalist, and then so much more. Now you're at the Hypergrowth analytics company, Snowflake. So I'm sure I'm leaving a billion things out. For those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, when you repeat it back, it sounds so impressive. I never consider it to be all that impressive. But my technology world didn't really start conventionally. I didn't start in technology. I was, as you mentioned, a broadcast journalist for NBC News for about 15 years, and that's where I got my start out of college. So I was chasing the dream of being a journalist, maybe going to the network, and so didn't get into technology early on. I did manage to get through the ranks, got a network contract at the end, and worked for NBC until I left the business in 2006 and went to Cisco Systems and launched a network called the Cisco Interaction Network there. And which is still going strong, I believe. But then that took me through these twists and turns that eventually landed me at DocuSign pre-IPO. And yeah, I mean, the storytelling aspect of the business has become such a critical part of how companies tell their story over time that it just, I don't know, maybe it was luck or Sarah's background, my style of storytelling, which did land me a couple of Emmy Awards, um, you know, translated really well. DocuSign, wanted that for their company, and it took advantage of it as we sort of went into our IPO and even beyond that, and transformed into the agreement cloud and a bigger platform. When I left there last year, I was really sort of thinking about what do I want to do next? Like, what's the next thing? And I realized there's still so much work to be done in organizations who have a great story to tell, have amazing customers who have a great story that they want to tell, and doing it in an integrated way across the business so that it affects everything from demand to engineering to marketing to brand. That's There's still a lot of work to be done there, and so Snowflake came calling and just seemed like a great opportunity for a company that was a partner, a customer at DocuSign. So I was familiar with Snowflake and have landed here, and it's the growth, the opportunity is still amazing, and it's fun to be at a place where, like, when you talk about the things you want to do, they're like, yes, we want that. So that's kind of where you catch me in the midst of my journey. And yeah, you and I connected a couple months ago, and you're like, oh my God, this would be a fantastic story to tell. So super excited to be here and sort of share some of the paltry knowledge that I could potentially bring to help folks who are looking to tell an integrated story for their company.
And because of just our, what Continuum does in our role, we really work across sales, engineering, and marketing, and across the gamut. We work with Fortune 10s, 100s, and then all the way down to startups. And
Yep.
so we hear these questions often. And being a behavioral analyst, I like to get to the how. I like to get
hmm
actionable. Maybe it's because I'm German. I don't know. I could blame it on whatever, but I like
Yes,
to
it's because
know,
you're German.
why not?
It's obvious. I mean, it's obvious.
It is pretty obvious. So I like to get to the how, and understanding your background kind of across storytelling, and I think sometimes we don't see sales, engineering, marketing as storytelling, and I don't know if we necessarily understand how that relates to growth in a business, particularly hyper growth, which you have now become sort of an impromptu expert on, and kind of
Mhm.
helping accelerate that. So you've really seen, the hyper growth from all angles, from pre-IPO to going IPO to now it's Snowflake. Knowing this, unpack for us, we talked a little bit about an integrated marketing approach. What does that actually mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's become kind of a buzzword, right? I think when you go into companies, they're like, yeah, storytelling. We want to do more storytelling and integrated marketing. But I think at sometimes folks don't really understand what that idea of integrated marketing means. So it's a great, poignant question. I think, I talk about the things people are doing to increase their numbers. They want to increase impressions. They want to increase brand. They want to do uplift in brand. But when we start talking about what that actually means, people don't really know. When we talk about integrated marketing, in my mind, integrated marketing means storytelling at a scale where every single business unit has a stake, and the content that you're creating, the work that you're doing, it spills across all of these other business units, and everybody has an opportunity to integrate and help tell that story. So if you've done a good job mapping your customer journey, right, from all points of the funnel, which we talk about awareness and all the way down to decision making, if you've done a good job of mapping that customer journey, every single stakeholder is going to have a reason to get involved. So sure, marketing and brand may be part of the bigger, broader impression and brand awareness piece, but sales, who has quotas and targets, needs to have a seat at that table, because they're going to ultimately help drive where this customer is going to land and when they do make a decision. And oh, by the way, engineering should have a stake in that, because there are going to be stakeholders who want to get involved in that conversation. So they should have a seat at the table to help craft and tell that story. Corporate marketing is going to want to have a seat at that table. So I think when we talk about integrated marketing, you want to consider all of those stakeholders who ultimately should be sitting at the table discussing what you're going to create, so that it will land and will be a win for everybody. And in my mind, any piece of content can and should have impact across the business. So, oftentimes there's this sort of tug of war between sales and marketing, they have all the control levels, the social media and demand and all of these various components. But sales and engineering have such an important role to play there. I think it's important that as you consider the content created piece, that you do integrate these various business partners in your organization to help tell a cohesive story. If you don't do that, you may win from a brand perspective. You may find tremendous amount of success from what the brand lift looks like, and impressions, and click-throughs, and all those various control metrics. But your sales team may be disappointed because they're not seeing the numbers that they wanted to see. Or worse, engineering might be disappointed because you're not telling a story that really highlights their product. I think everybody gets so caught up in finding out how they can get theirs and get the information they need sent out, that we ultimately make the mistake of trying to fit 50 pounds of content into a 5-pound sack. So you've got this, you'll end up getting these product demos that are 7 minutes long, and every single feature that you've ever created is going to be jammed in there because, everybody thought that was a good idea. So when you sit down with a broad spectrum of folks across your organization and start determining what the content should look like, there's a lot of ways you can skin that cat and provide value no matter who it is. So when we talk about integrated marketing or storytelling, to be honest, those things kind of roll together in a way that allows everybody to have a seat at the table.
And I'm glad you brought up this side of storytelling. I mean, is it fair to say that integrated marketing is sort of a cohesive story, that you're kind of pulling all of the different pieces of the business together to tell one story? Or is it a bunch of little stories that, kind of make up a bigger, brand message, whatever it might be?
Yes and yes. I think it is.
Spoken like a true lawyer. Good.
Right. I think it is I think it's both. I think, if you are focused on making sure that everybody is going to win in this circumstance, then aligning to something that gives you a North Star for an entire, I don't know, quarter, 2 quarters, year is actually a really good idea, because you will tell this big story. You will talk about your company from a high level. You will talk about growth. You will talk about, your user conference, fit X into your user conference, whatever it is, momentum, achieve, summit, all the motivational words. But I think that bigger, broader story then layers, it's a click down. You click down into something bigger. So when you're aligned with your demand team and your sales team and your engineering team, and you've all determined what that path is going to look like for the year, always you're going to have these big brand moments. If you've ever read the book Play Bigger, they call them lightning strikes. People have different names for it, but you find these moments in time where everybody's going to activate, and every activation has maybe a slightly different take, a slightly different story, but everybody's aligning to the same thing. I never think that going big on brand, people say that all the time, we're going to go big on brand. They don't even actually know what that means, but they like to say it. I think when you do continue to tell your bigger story, your brand story, and then you want to tell that sales story, or you want to celebrate those wins, or you want to celebrate the product and engineering, it's easy to do that inside of a campaign that gives you space, and everybody has a seat at that table. Look, if you get so caught up in just one side of that, for example, engineering, if all you do is spend time appealing to that side of the brand or the campaign, you're going to make a lot of engineers really happy, but you're going to miss out on other areas where you could be doing something. And by the way, I used to work for a CEO who was an engineer and created an amazing cybersecurity product, like hands down, probably the best cybersecurity product in the market. But he didn't believe in marketing. He felt there was no reason. A good product, good engineering doesn't need marketing. That was his idea. And he was being killed by the competition, who had a far less impressive product, but guess what they were spending money on? Marketing. So they were crushing it. Their stock was crazy. People were going nuts. Once you find the balance, I think that's where you see successes take place. And I think everybody has a different perspective on what the story is going to be. I think there's a way to fine tune that and get alignment across the business. And so if you're telling a great Snowflake story about, data warehouse or data lake or data cybersecurity or Unistore, whatever it is that we're talking about at the moment, we find little places to insert those engineering moments. It tells a much better story, but we don't have to try to fit everything into the 5-pound sack.
Yeah. And it makes so much sense. It's funny because people will come to us, or organizations will come to us, and they're struggling with, awareness, demand gen, whatever it might be. Sometimes it's just messaging. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because, you'll see all this different messaging go out from those different groups, and then they wonder why their sales cycles are slow, or why the competition is beating them out. And it's like, well, take my behavioral analyst hat on, and I can tell you a few reasons why that might be happening, but there's a flip side. So how do you constantly innovate? How do you stay in front of the competition and what's important to your business and technical decision buyers, without putting too many cooks in the kitchen? Because I think I went there. I'm going to ask it. How do you get that balance?
That is a tough question, because I think that, and I think the key to it likely is going to be demand. And demand is it's become part of marketing, but it's so much bigger than that, because so many people so many parts of the business rely on these leads to come through. Right. And we sort of figure out where the content and the storytelling fatigue lands. And oftentimes we do things so rapidly as a marketing or a sales organization, we don't take time to see what worked and what didn't. And so in my mind, if you launch a campaign and you're maybe in the beginning stages not seeing the results that you want to see, or you're not getting the registration for that webinar that you think is going to be fantastic, or your mini event that you're holding, at the Hyatt is not getting the attention. Before you start throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, and move into a different direction, how about you take a little time to see where maybe you could tweak a few things? Maybe there's opportunity to rework the headline. Maybe the abstract wasn't landing quite well. Maybe if you would promote the venue in a different way. So I think as a marketing organization, and from my background, and by the way, I did this at CNET, ZDNet and Tech Republic, which is the demand arms of CNET and CBS Interactive. One of the big jobs you had to do was look at poorly performing events or things and rework everything to make them better. And just a simple tweak, making your headline a little sexier, maybe reworking the abstract, maybe rethinking the venue and going someplace else. Sort of being able to pivot with what you currently have before you decide to go a completely different direction. One, it'll save you a lot of money. It'll likely save you time, and it'll give you an opportunity to sort of rethink what may have worked. And by the way, you shouldn't be afraid of that failure. You shouldn't be afraid to make those mistakes. That's part of the growth opportunity, and it's also part of the team kind of coming together, because once you find the secret sauce and you're starting to make it all work, that's where the magic starts to hit, and everybody starts aligned to the same conversation and they're aligning to the same story. So I hope that answers your question. I don't know if it was an exact answer, but I think taking time to look at what you've done, what you've accomplished, and figuring out if it's the right thing, or if we can just make some tweaks to what we have that's existing. I think that's a great way to sort of think about it.
And see, I didn't even know about that piece of your background. Of course you did that,
Of course.
We'll just make a list of things you haven't done,
Right.
That's how we'll know. No,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. It really does. And you bring up things like we see a lot of use cases and case studies and things like that. And, we've talked about this in the past about how do you, instead of taking content that are just sort of piecemeal and really integrate it across one unified message and make sure that the pieces of the organization feel like they're part of that integrated messaging or integrated marketing. And, from a business standpoint, because at the end of the day, we're all in business, we need to make money and continue to make money and continue to grow. From a business impact, what do you see the changes, differences, growth potential in having this type of a marketing approach?
I see, if you've got the right message and you're using your customers as they're telling your story, that third party validation, and ultimately you're finding a way to connect the humanity of what you do to the product, there is no chance you're going to fail. So when we think about customer storytelling in the technology world, people get so caught up in speeds and feeds and what the technology does, and let's show the UI, and that they forget that there's a human element to the story. Every technology ultimately is there to make life easier for people. At DocuSign, it was about, being able to sign anything, anywhere, at any time on any device. And you could be on, Everest. And if you've got Wi-Fi, you can sign it and close the deal. At Snowflake, data and our cloud data applications, it mobilizes business, but everything affects humans. So tell human stories. Boil your messaging down to the thing that makes it connect to humanity, and make sure you're telling that story. And better, make sure that the customers that you guys have found success in are willing to tell that human story as well. People hear enough about technology and the click-throughs and all of the fun stuff that we do, but if you connect it to humanity, you connect it to people, and ultimately boil it down, in my mind, there is no way you won't find success, because everybody will connect. Even average consumers who maybe aren't a B2B business or a business or an enterprise grade business, once you start telling stories like that, people will connect with it. Like, oh my God, I get it. Cisco's a great example. Cisco's products don't affect every single human on a day-to-day basis, but the work that they do affects humanity in different ways, and they find the opportunity to tell those stories. So I think that's the way that businesses will find success, and that is to create human stories that make us all connected.
And from a learning perspective, it transfers into working memory faster. So people remember, retain, and generalize information faster when you have that human element to it, not just internally, but your customers, your future customers, their customers. So the impact is so much bigger and so much faster, when you have that human element.
I know. And no matter where you are, like if you're a big company, if you're a Disney or AT&T, or of course, every smaller organization or mid-sized business isn't going to have that same story to tell, but they will look at it and say, oh, we could do that too, or we connect to that. Yeah, it's a different scale. So I think being able to figure out the secret sauce of telling those big global stories and finding the humanity in that on a global scale. But then for your organization, maybe regional stories with a smaller organization, it's still important to tell it, and it's still important to use it. And I think that's the way that you take sort of these big ideas that organizations like a DocuSign or a Cisco or a Snowflake that they use from a storytelling perspective to touch the bottom line. Yeah. Even smaller mid-sized companies can do the same thing because they have great customers.
Completely agree. And you're not talking about something that has to be necessarily very expensive.
Nope.
A lot of things I'm seeing now are actually user generated or have a user generated feel. So think, those YouTube shorts that are trending right now, or think TikTok videos where you feel like somebody's holding up their phone just talking to you. A lot of those can be very effective. And you're seeing even big brands do that now because people are sick of being sold. And to your point, they want the human element. They want to feel connected. They want to feel heard. They want to feel part of something bigger. Is that fair?
And 100%. And look at what we're doing right now. We didn't bring in a massive crew like the old days when you were going to do a satellite interview. You had to have a 15-person crew with a sat truck, and you're paying, $7,000 a minute for sat time. We're sitting here in an office, your home office, and we're communicating in a way that has impact on a much bigger audience than we would ever have dreamed possible. There's so many avenues to having the discussion, telling the stories. It just takes somebody with a little innovative mind to work through the logistics of it and get it done. You've obviously really worked hard to set up your lights and get your everything just right. And I'm, at my office, and I've got a couple of fluorescents on, but we're still able to communicate in different parts of the country. I think that's an important thing for people to consider. And you can engage your customers the same way.
Exactly. And in my experience, they want to be engaged. I think when it doesn't feel so salesy, because we do a lot of, case studies and success stories and solution briefs. And a lot of times what we find is the most impactful are the ones, to your point, where you're pulling out that human element, you're pulling out the outcome, as opposed to here's the speed, here's the feed, here's why my product is better than, this product next door kind of thing. So shockingly, the time has just flown by. So many more questions. We'll have to have you back on. But in the meantime, for folks who, maybe have some more questions for you or need some more resources, where can they find you, and any last words of wisdom?
Let me give the words of wisdom first, because that's what I'm thinking about. When you're telling stories, when you're finding customers to tell that story, make sure that you're humanizing who they are, their brand, what they do first. I always talk about it 80-20. 80% of that customer journey or that customer story should be about them. What are they passionate about? What do they like? What do they do? What's their brand mean to them? The 20% is what your business does to help prop that up, to make that possible. So 80% them, 20% you, because that mix, it gives, again, them the opportunity to tout the value that they bring and how you help make that possible. So that would be my advice in terms of next stages of storytelling. The way you can find me, I'm obviously on Twitter at Jonas Tichenor. You can find me at Jonas Tichenor on Instagram, LinkedIn. I'd love to have new followers, and that's probably the best place to field questions if somebody wanted to reach out, because I'm on there quite a bit. So yeah.
Sounds good. I absolutely love these conversations. I appreciate the experience And you can send your hate mail to Jonas.
You can tell me how wrong I am if you DM me on LinkedIn, and certainly we'll happy to debate that have that conversation.
That's right. Jonas, thank you. This was a delight.
Pleasure.
I'm constantly learning from you. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
All right.
Look forward to next time.
See you soon.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.